This was a group buy that we did 5 months ago where this distributor that we bought the Dysons from, they had a direct connection to a very large manufacturer of kitchen products. They had a great relationship with them. They'd been selling them for years. And the manufacturer approached this distributor and said, hey, we've got a pretty big load that we're looking to move all at once. It was about 650K. I think it was like 5 truckloads of product. And they were asking the distributor to broker that out to some of their buyers. And that was a special one for me because we actually met with them in New York. So we sat down with them at dinner. We actually went out with them, right? We even went out to the club with them. And I love to tell the story because we sealed this deal at a club in New York City at midnight over a handshake. Like you said, you buy a larger amount of inventory, you send it to FBA, and then one day Amazon decides, hey, you can't sell this anymore. So what do? You got to pull it all back out of Amazon and you got to monetize it in some way. From September of 2020 to today, December of 2024, that campaign has generated $802,000 in additional sales for a total ad spend of just over 18 grand.
So on this episode of the 2x eCommerce podcast, we're unlocking the secrets of Amazon Wholesale, how to buy in bulk, dominate the buy box, and turn supplier relationships into serious profit. If scaling a 7 or even 8-figure Amazon business excites you, then trust me, you'll want to hear this.
This is the 2x eCommerce podcast, hosted by Kunle Campbell.
Hey folks, welcome back to the 2x eCommerce podcast. Now imagine tapping into a network where you don't just buy wholesale, you buy with power. Where one smart deal can give you leverage, increase your margin, and put you ahead of the competition. That's exactly what today's guest, Ganim, has mastered. He started from flipping thrift store finds and now runs a massive group buys worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, securing the best deals and navigating Amazon's tricky policies like a pro. We talk about how to land game-changing wholesale deals, why Amazon is favoring professional sellers more than ever, and the exact playbook to build your own profitable wholesale business. This is a must listen for any operator looking to expand, automate, and win big. And before we dive in, hit that follow button on your favorite podcast platform. The more you support the show, the bigger the guest and insights we bring to help you grow. Now let's get into it. Welcome to the 2x eCommerce podcast.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you.
Amazing. We've been in touch for the last 6 or 8 weeks, I think. I joined your community. You have a lot going on. Do you want to just give people an elevator pitch on what you do, what you've been doing, really, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So really what I've been up to, it breaks down to 3 main components and it really is structured in the form of 3 different businesses. So the first business, which is the primary, is the Amazon wholesale business, which I know we're going to go into at length here during this conversation, but that's where we're buying products in bulk from manufacturers and distributors and selling them on Amazon. So that's been the main business for the last 7.5 years for me. Second business is my personal brand, where I'm putting out content at scale, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and then podcasts as well. And so monetizing that through affiliates, sponsorships, that type of thing. And the third, which is the newest, but also fastest growing and where I'm spending a lot of my time, is, like you mentioned, the community that we have. We've got a fantastic community of almost 200 Amazon sellers, all selling in the same business model that I mentioned, wholesale. And we're seeing a lot of really fun stuff happening inside that community as well. So that's what I've been up to in a nutshell.
Amazing. I'm a member of your community and it's essentially wholesale, right?
Yeah. So the community, it really breaks down to 2 tiers and it's called the Wholesale Network. So inside the Wholesale Network, we've got our Wholesale Network tier, which is the folks that are trying to get to that 7-figure per year mark in revenue. And so we're helping them through coaching, through one-on-one training, through workshops, courses, all that good stuff. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we've got our mastermind community, which is sellers who are already selling 7 or 8 figures per year on Amazon. with the wholesale business model. And the main benefit there, and I know we're going to get into this as well, is we're doing a lot of what I like to call group buys within that community. And really, that's just us combining our capital, combining our connections, and combining our expertise to buy large amounts of product and have leverage as a result, and then turn around and sell that product on Amazon.
Okay. So really that power, you're leveraging purchasing power with how many merchants are on the platform?
So we've got, you mean within the mastermind community? We've got
Yes, with
60.
them.
So we've got about 65 people within that community there. And the beauty of that is 65 people, but in terms of buying power, we're talking 8 figures in buying power between everybody in the community there. So when we approach a vendor or a distributor or a brand, as we like to even call ourselves a buying group, right? If we like to approach them as a buying group, it's way more enticing to that supplier to deal with a large buying group than it is for them to deal with some individual Amazon seller or individual operator. So it does give us leverage and makes us really a more serious contender.
Okay. And is Amazon the only selling channel?
So within our group, that is the main selling channel by far. We do have some folks running some Shopify operations. We've got actually quite a few people doing really well in Walmart as well. And then we have other people that have retail connections. So some of them are doing some B2B distribution to retail as well. We run every end of the gamut, but Amazon is the main channel.
Okay. And then what about category of products? So do you specialize in like electronics or other categories?
So I'd say, as at least me personally, I like to sell a lot of tools and automotive products. That's just where I've stumbled into over the years. We just happen to have some really good relationships with some tool distributors, some that have been in the business for a very long time, and ones that we've been buying through for a number of years. And then as a group, as a community there, when we're doing these group buys, we're not really focused on any particular category. The very first, it's actually funny, the very first group buy that we did as a community back in about a year ago when we started was for $96,000 of Dyson vacuums. And there's a whole backstory behind that. But really, the moral of the story is we are product agnostic. My motto, I like to say this, is if it makes dollars, it makes sense. So one day it's vacuums. This past week, it was 6 figures worth of DeWalt tools, the DeWalt flashlights to be specific. And it's never a boring day, let's put it that way.
Okay. There's so much to unpack here. How did you start? I know you mentioned something about you had a family business, which was wholesale. I'd just like you to take us to your genesis, please.
Yeah, so origin story is as follows. So I'd always been interested in buying low and selling high growing up. In fact, in college, I started buying stuff off Facebook Marketplace and turning around and flipping it on eBay. And then one day I stumbled upon this YouTube video of this guy talking about he's going into Marshalls and TJ Maxx and Walmart and Target, and he's scanning stuff on the shelves, comparing it to the price of that product on Amazon and flipping it on Amazon. And that to me just completely blew my mind, because up until that point, I thought everything I bought on Amazon, I was buying from Jeff Bezos, right? I didn't even know that there were third party sellers were a thing. Shortly after I graduated from college, this was back in May of 2017, I actually started going around to every thrift store in my town and buying used books for 50 cents, a dollar, $2, and selling them on Amazon for anywhere from 15, 20. Some of these used textbooks go for 50 or $100. So the ROI was crazy high. Fast forward a little bit, I actually had to move across the country to Chicago. Did not have a way of driving around to thrift stores. I didn't have a car. So I was forced to pivot if I wanted to continue selling on Amazon, which I did. So I started doing what's called online arbitrage. I'm buying products from Target.com or Walmart.com or DickSportingGoods.com and flipping it on Amazon. Fast forward another 2 years, a much more scalable business model, come to find out, is what's called wholesale, which is what we're currently doing, which is instead of buying from those retail websites, going directly to the source, whether that's to the manufacturer themselves or to a large distributor, and buying in very large quantities and getting better pricing and getting terms as a result. So that kind of leads me to where we are now.
I mean, so you're in Chicago. You're based in Chicago now.
So I moved there, graduated from college, moved to Chicago for about 2 years. And it's funny because when I was in Chicago, I was actually working for a big corporate tech company, and I just got fed up with the environment. And it was one day that I decided to pretty much throw all of my stuff into a Penske truck, drive back to North Carolina, which is where I'm from, which is where I live now, moved back in with my mom, and decided to try to make a go at Amazon wholesale full time. Even though I was like 6 months into the game, and even though I had made like maybe 300 bucks in profit up to that point, I'm like, I'm just going to try to figure this thing out because the corporate thing's not for me.
You took a chance on yourself, which is fantastic. So, what's been the journey thus far from a wholesaling standpoint? How did you build a wholesaling business from ground up?
Yep, great question. So we've had quite the journey because, and what you'll find the trend here is that we never really stuck to any particular path too long, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. So when we started out, again, I started on Amazon in 2017, which is about 7.5 years ago. Started doing wholesale January of 2019. And when I started doing wholesale, I was 100% what we call brand direct, right? I was just calling brands and trying to buy directly from brands. So my
Okay,
strategy.
let's
Oh, go ahead.
pause a little bit.
Yep.
How did you know what brands to call? Because a lot of people get frozen right there. You're not in a particular category. So your category agnostic. Where did you get the list from, and what happened?
Yes, great question. So that's the number one most common question I get by far, even from people that are in this business. People that are doing Amazon wholesale still struggle with this. And that is, how do you find good suppliers? And also, spoiler alert for those in the audience, we do have a free resource we're going to give away at the end, which kind of goes into a lot more detail on this. But the gist of it is I use a tool, it's called Smart Scout, to pull a very specific report, which essentially breaks down the brands in a given category to a much finer criteria. And so to be more tactically speaking, I like to sell tools in automotive, right? Tools in automotive is one of my favorite categories. So I'll go into this tool, I will choose the category tools, and then I'll set a few very specific criteria. And that'll take the number of brands in the tools category from, let's say, 30,000 brands down to a very targeted list of about 200 or 250, right? That's my short list. Those are the brands that I then go in and reach out to and try to open a direct wholesale account with.
Okay, makes sense. So I like the fact that you honed in on a particular tools and automotive parts. So yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then that's when you okay. And then what was their reaction when you called them initially?
So remember our chat in May earlier this season, episode 33 with Sam Piliero about scaling from $1 million to $10 million with Google Ads? We talked about the power of maximizing your ad spend. Now, imagine supercharging your Google search and shopping ads with reviews. As a Google partner, Reviews.io enables you to seamlessly integrate products and company reviews into your ads, helping you build trust and increase click-through rates. Adding verified reviews to your ads can be a game changer for standing out in any competitive space. One of my personal favorite ways to extend the reach of reviews is through their reputation management feature. This tool helps you distribute reviews to third-party platforms like Trustpilot and Facebook, or even Google itself. Whether you want to send all your reviews to one platform or have Reviews.io automatically spread them where you need the most visibility, this feature ensures your reviews are working harder for your brand. With Reviews.io, you can manage both product and company reviews in one place, which streamlines your efforts while amplifying your brand's presence. If you're already using reviews or feel like you're not getting enough, there's a faster way. With Reviews.io's Review Booster, you can collect reviews not only from new customers, but also from past customers, so you're not having to wait around for fresh orders to start building trust. Simply upload a list of customer details, and Reviews.io will handle the rest, automatically sending out review requests with customized email invitations. This means you can quickly boost your credibility and start converting more shoppers. And if you're stuck in a long-term contract with your current reviews provider, Reviews.io makes switching easy for listeners of the 2x e-commerce podcast. Through their contract buyout program, Reviews.io will honor the time left on your contract so you can transition seamlessly without having to double pay for services. Once your buyout period ends, you'll enjoy their flexibility, no commitment monthly plans, giving you freedom and results without being locked into something that doesn't work for your business. Ready to make your reviews work harder for your business? Use the code 2X to get 10% off your first year with reviews.io. Just click the link in the episode description or ask the support team to apply the code for you. Applies to new customers only. Terms and conditions apply.
So usually the reaction is not too good if you're not positioning yourself properly, right? Because when I started, like I said, when I started back in 2019, multiple years ago, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I'm calling these brands and I'm basically saying, hey, my name's Corey. I sell on Amazon. Can I buy your products for resale? And I'm getting boom, hung up on, right? Nobody's taking me seriously, but it's because I'm positioning myself as just an Amazon seller, right? Amazon sellers are a dime a dozen. So these guys just didn't want to even hear from me. So really it was when I started positioning myself as more of an e-commerce business owner that has a retail and distribution business, right? Just taking the business more seriously. That's when brands were much more willing to work with me. And I saw my, I guess, account close rate go from, let's say, 5% to 15 to 20 to nowadays, if I call a brand or a distributor and position myself properly and show proper value, you're able to land 30 to 40% of accounts, usually no problem.
What were your first few deals? What did you, so you mentioned the Dyson group deal, but there might have
Yep.
been deals before the group deal. How did you, what was the trajectory and the journey to putting community together and doing the Dyson deal?
So I'll even give you a rundown on my very first wholesale deal ever. And it was with a brand that, like I said, I went through that process that I mentioned earlier. I found this brand and they were a brand of lawn and garden products. And they actually happened to be located in Chicago, where I was also located. And so I just cold called them out of the blue, gave them my normal pitch. Hey, I'm Corey Ganim, but interested in potentially purchasing your products for sale in our retail business. Come to find out, they're located near me. I go meet them in person. I'm able to buy about $2,500 worth of their products there on the spot, which they told me they get like 100 calls like that per week. The only reason they were willing to talk to me is because I went and showed up there in person. So that was the very first buy ever. Fast forward to going to trade shows and buying $60,000 worth of Gillette razors at a time. Fast forward to buying all these Dyson vacuums as a group. There's really hundreds of situations in between that we could dive into.
Okay, so for listeners, who are they reaching out to? Are they reaching out to distributors or are they reaching out to manufacturers?
So they could really go either direction. It's my recommendation usually to go directly to the manufacturer. It's going to be a more direct path. And what you can pivot to asking if it's a huge manufacturer or let's say like a Procter and Gamble type brand that we just don't have a chance of getting a direct account with. Something good to ask those types of brands is, well, hey, can you put me in touch with the distributor here in my area? So getting a warm introduction from the manufacturer a lot of times is better than going directly to the manufacturer themselves.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay, let's break down the deal. Let's break down. I think let's look at the first Dyson deal, and obviously you have matured and you've done much bigger deals of recent. So let's start out with the first, with your first group buy, and we'll take it from there. How did the Dyson deal come about, and what were the margins like, and the number of participants in the deal?
Yeah, so this all came about as the result of a relationship that came from a trade show. So there's a trade show that I attended. I believe this was March of last year, so March of 2023. At this trade show, I met a rep for a distributor, and this distributor is a pretty large distributor of consumer electronics products, right? Anything from vacuums to headphones, so DVD players, you name it. I get to talking to this guy. We ended up setting a Zoom call up for after the show. And he says to me, he's like, hey, Corey, would love to work with you, but unfortunately, we get a lot of Amazon sellers that waste our time. So our minimum order for any new customers who are considering selling on Amazon is 50 grand. And you've got to buy directly off of our price list, which, as anybody who's in this business knows, the price list is where not usually the best deals are, right? This is where the leftover stuff goes that these distributors want to get rid of. What he's saying to me basically is, hey, you've got to earn your way in. So I'm looking at their price list. I'm like, I want to get my foot in the door with this supplier because I know there's a lot more good deals on the back end. And we find this product. It's an LG headphone, and we have to obviously buy 50 grand worth. I didn't quite have enough money at the time. So what I did is I tapped my buddy Kaja. I said, hey, Kaj, here's this distributor. I met him at a trade show. They're vetted. I've got this deal here. It's not a home run. It's a base hit, but it's a foot in the door with these guys. Do you want to go in with me? Because I think we have a lot of benefit on the back end. And he's, you know what? Let's do it. So we did. We bought the product. Transaction went smoothly. I tried to go out of my way to be the easiest customer this guy had ever worked with, right? Because I wanted to earn his trust. That deal went smoothly. After that, he starts bringing me opportunities because he sees that we're legitimate. He sees that we're serious. And one of those opportunities was for this Dyson. I think it was either like the V7 or the V10 clone vacuum cleaner. He's, hey, Corey, I've got these Dysons coming in. What do you think about them? They tend to do really well on Amazon. I can tell you guys are legit. What do you think? And so I looked at it. I'm like, damn, these look really good. And so at the time, what really good, quote unquote, looks in our world was, keep in mind, this is a higher ticket product. This thing sells for around $400 or $500. And it was looking like about a 22 to 23% ROI on this product. And so after you factor in returns, which on a higher ticket product definitely hurts your margins, probably in the 17, 18% range, which typically isn't great, but this was a very high volume product as well. So not only were we, we're making a 17 or 18% ROI, sure, but it's selling hundreds of units per month at a very high price. So he brings me this opportunity. The MOQ, which stands for minimum order quantity, was about 100K on this particular product. I didn't have 100K, but I had a mastermind community that I mentioned before that we had actually started building more formally at the time. This was about probably 7 or 8 months ago. And so it was as simple as putting a blast out into the community. Hey guys, I've got this opportunity, somewhat time sensitive because if we don't buy it, somebody else definitely is because it's a good deal. Who wants to participate with me? And immediately I had two of the guys inside there, Nick and Dylan, say, hey man, I'm in. They wired me the money. I wired the money directly to the supplier. And then we completed the transaction. The supplier actually sends those products directly to FBA, directly to Amazon, where Amazon then fulfills those orders directly to the customer. And it went very smoothly. Everybody made money on the deal and it was a great experience. And we've spent, I believe that distributor told us our group is their number one e-commerce customer. And keep in mind, this is a $500 million per year distributor. I think we've spent about 12 million with them in the last 7 months is what we were told.
Well done.
So that foot in the door was huge to getting to that point, right?
Incredible. So how many units did you eventually purchase from them? The Dysons, the V10s?
So the Dysons, I think we went 100 units each because I don't remember the exact buy cost, but it was something like we were like right around 35K each is how much we spent. And yeah, it was somewhere around like 100 units each, something like that. So again, not a high, I guess not like just a higher, not higher volume product, excuse me, higher sale price product, which is the type of products that I love. I love selling expensive stuff.
With the 17% return.
Yep.
On your
And that's
35%.
after factoring in returns.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to dig deeper into the unit economics on Amazon. So obviously you have your FBA fees, which you can't change essentially.
Sure.
Do you do ads? And how does what other expenses what does your P&L look like? Say, using the Dyson deal.
Yeah. So in the traditional wholesale model, which is what I've been describing up to this point, we actually don't run any ads. The only time we run ads is if we're working, let's say, exclusively with the manufacturer. And as part of our deal with them, we are running ads, right? Otherwise, I don't run any ads aside from a campaign, which I think I can break down here shortly, which is added significant money to my bottom line, the catch-all campaign that I mentioned to you earlier. But like I said, so we have no ad spend there. You pretty much just got your overhead in the form of your team, your software expenses, your inbound shipping costs, your COGS, and then, like you said, your Amazon fees, which unfortunately you can't change. And that's fixed right around depending on your average sale price, it's going to be 27 to 33% of your revenue, right around 30% on average.
Okay. The rest of it. So what about your COGS?
COGS is usually around 55% of revenue. So a healthy wholesale business is going to have COGS under 55% of revenue,
Okay, so
ideally.
55 plus 20, 25, I guess.
Amazon fees are right around 30%, right? So you've got COGS at, let's say, 55,
Hmm.
Amazon fees at 30. So now you're at 85.
Hmm.
You're really, if your OPEX is another 10%, then you're at 95 and your net profit's at 5%. That's
5%.
again, assuming you're paying yourself a salary there within OPEX, then that's a pretty healthy wholesale business at
What's an
scale.
average salary
So
for
I
every
personally,
100K?
yeah, so for every 100K, and it's hard to say because I'll tell you what I pay myself, right? We're going to do 3.3 million this year in revenue, and I pay myself 120K a year W2, which after my W2 is factored in, our net margin on the year is going to be around 4%. So again, at scale, it the margins are not anything crazy, right? Because it's a volume game.
It's a volume game, yeah. And the fact that you don't have to really advertise, it's really an operational efficiency game, really.
All it
Just
is,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So lots of automation is required to really bring that OPEX down. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do have 2 really talented team members overseas in the Philippines, both of them full-time with our business. One of them focuses on the buying side and the logistics side of the business, and the other focuses more on the admin side. But aside from them, it's automation, software, and like you said, trying to keep costs and keep overhead as low as possible.
So in your program, you teach how to train your VAs, the assistants, the staff that you get overseas.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the big things that's really one of the big parts of the curriculum within our community, the wholesale network, is teaching people not only how to operate the business themselves, but teaching them how to properly delegate and not just, hey, hand off some task to a VA, but here's how you do it properly. Here's how you document that. And here's how you make sure that you're not having to take this task back in house down the line when that system inevitably fails, right?
Okay.
It's more of a sustainable approach.
Okay. And then what about the risk? You have the buy box. It's quite frustrating winning the buy box. And then I think sometimes you're not allowed to sell. What happens if you make a big purchase order, you get it to Amazon, and then you're locked off the listing? How do you navigate those sort of challenges?
Yeah, and listen, what you just mentioned is a very real issue, and that happened to me twice this year, and it's happened to other people I know as well, where, like you said, you buy a large amount of inventory, you send it to FBA, and then one day Amazon decides, hey, you can't sell this anymore. So what do? You got to pull it all back out of Amazon and you got to monetize it in some way. And like I said, this happened to me earlier this year, but that is the benefit in being a part of a community of other sellers, because what I was able to do in that situation, I pulled that inventory out. I sent a message to the community and said, "Hey guys, I just got gated on this specific ASIN. Gated meaning can no longer sell. Who wants it? I'll sell it to you at cost. I just don't want to lose any money on this deal." Immediately, I had 3 people say, "Hey, I'm still eligible to sell," right? Because how it works on Amazon is not everybody is gated and everything. I just got unlucky. And so I was able to essentially resell this inventory to this other person in my community. I got all my money back. I didn't lose any money. And they went on and sold it and crushed it, made a killing. So again, that's where having that community of folks around you can be very beneficial.
I 100% agree with you. There's nothing like community. It's so important to be around like-minded people, particularly when your chips are down. There's always someone there to either inspire you or to save you, to help you. So yeah, good stuff. Speaking of community, how did you? Because it's a skill in of itself. It's a skill. How did you how you managed to build this community? You have over 200 members in the general community, and you said about 60 something in the mastermind. What tips do you have for listeners who are looking to build communities of customers for their D2C e-commerce businesses?
So I think a big key to our success and why this has worked out so well so far is simply put because I care a lot, right?
Mm.
About the community. I care a lot about helping people and I want to make it an experience and a place where people can feel comfortable both with themselves and their business. So I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. And I've even seen it in our space where you see Amazon creators or Amazon sellers launching paid communities. And it's more of a money grab, right? They're not present, they're not answering questions, they're not too active. Whereas I do pride myself on being the opposite, and I pride our community on having those same values of, hey, we're here to help each other. We're here to support each other. And this is a growth minded place. So I think truly caring and instilling that care into the community is what's going to get people to not only join, but stay, which is even more important.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, let's fast forward to another sort of challenging deal for you. Not necessarily a very recent one, but somewhere in between that first deal and a more recent one. What did it look like? What did you purchase and how did you make it happen? How did you make it successful?
So did you say a challenging deal, one that maybe was a little bit of an issue?
Or I'll say milestone deal rather than a challenging deal where you're like super proud of yourselves for putting it together.
I'd say this is actually I have a great example of this. So this was a group buy that we did back in probably about 5 months ago where I'm not going to name the specific brand, but so that distributor that I mentioned earlier, the one that I met at the trade show that we bought the Dysons from, they had a direct connection to a very large manufacturer of kitchen products. They had a great relationship with them. They'd been selling them for years. And the manufacturer approached this distributor and said, hey, we've got a pretty big load that we're looking to move all at once. It was about 650K. I think it was like 5 truckloads of product. And they were asking the distributor to broker that out to some of their buyers. And that was a special one for me because we actually met with them in New York. So we sat down with them at dinner. We actually went out with them, right? We even went out to the club with them. And I love to tell the story because we sealed this deal at a club in New York City at midnight over a handshake. And it's one that it felt like the culmination of over a year of relationship and buying and working together into what at that point was the biggest deal that we had done together as a group. And I think we had, let's see, it was either 8 or 11 community members participate in that. So we split that equally because these were products that did big volume, good margins, and we had enough room for 8 or 11 people to get in on it. So it just felt good, man. It was like, felt like one of those guys in the movies or something.
Yeah, business friendships, right?
Yeah. And it's fun. Yeah. I like those
It's
guys
fun.
too. That's a cool part about it.
How big was the deal again? You said.
It was 650K buy cost. And I
Mhm.
know I throw around these numbers, which are not big compared to like there are bigger guys watching this that think that's nothing, but I'm not throwing around numbers to try and brag or anything. I'm just trying to give people a realistic view into, hey, this is what I guess e-commerce looks like at this stage or at this scale or in this particular industry, if
It's
anything.
it's a journey. It's a journey, and the theme of this month really is wholesale. We're hearing from different sorts of wholesalers. I'm going to speak into wholesale to the head of wholesale for quite a big electronics brand next week, and it's just we need to hear stories at different stages in the journey. So I really appreciate all that you're sharing here. And then
Sure.
more recently, just looking at 2025, what's the outlook and what sort of deals are you now so focused, given all the experience you've managed to build over the last few years?
Yeah. So 2025 outlook overall, I'd say as an industry is very positive. Now, there are people in the Amazon space right now that they're throwing up the white flag. A lot of people are quitting because Amazon is enacting stricter policies. They're more strict on supply chain requirements. Amazon has gotten stricter than ever, but that is a huge boon for professional sellers like myself, like the folks in our community. The ones who are doing wholesale at scale are really poised to benefit, in my opinion, going into 2025 and beyond. Now, as far as specific opportunities that I'm most excited about heading into 2025, so there's two in particular that come to mind. One is the relationship that we're forming with a buying group for in the tool industry. This is a $900 million per year buying group that has access to the biggest brands in tools like Milwaukee, DeWalt, Makita, et cetera, you name it. We just placed our first order with them last week. And I think the opportunity with them in 2025 is massive. We've already started going through some of their products, and I see them as being one of those 10x partners. The second one is a very large grocery distributor. Similar situation where one of our members actually has a pre-existing relationship with this distributor. And he said, hey, man, I've got way too many opportunities and not nearly enough capital. So how about we start brokering some of these deals out to the community so everybody can benefit from that. We're doing our first round of those deals next week. And I think, again, opportunity there is massive because we haven't even scratched the surface.
When you say groceries, is this for Amazon Fresh or for Amazon or just general Amazon?
Just general Amazon. So just general sale on the platform. So I'm talking anything from, I'm just making these up, but M&Ms to your Pepsi to just brand names like that. Anything that people would just buy off of Amazon.
Off Amazon. So super, super interesting. And then within the community, are you categorizing just sellers by their interest? Like you probably not going to participate in a grocery deal, I'm guessing, given the fact that you mentioned earlier that you're focused on tooling and automotive parts. So is there segmentation happening in terms of, or categorization happening based on interest now in the group, in the space, in your group, your private group, private mastermind rather?
Sure. So it's actually more organic. So I wouldn't say we do any sort of segmenting because the way I see it, everybody that's a part of the mastermind has equal opportunity access to all of the deals that we have. But we have noticed that specific members have specific preferences, right? For example, one of our guys, I know for a fact, any Oral-B toothbrushes we post, he's going to buy every one of them, right? He's going to beat somebody to the punch. And then we've got other guys where DeWalt tools, they're taking as many as they can get. But it is more of a first come, first serve type dynamic, just because, again, I just think we've got to give everybody fair access. Now, there are certain opportunities that come up that we might have to limit them for some reason. Hey, this is a very selective opportunity, blah, 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 whatever. We can only have 3 people on it. So we in that case, we would do some sort of like raffle or some sort of drawing, but we try to make it as even as possible.
Is there any action in TikTok store?
And in TikTok shop, you said?
TikTok shop, yeah.
So we have a couple members who are experimenting on TikTok shop. I know some guys specifically who are doing a lot with TikTok shop affiliate, which I know is a little outside the scope of my knowledge.
Mhm.
But bottom line, I think potential there is huge. What I've seen be most successful is people that have access to either a lot of influencer marketers or networks of influencer marketers who can afford to pay large groups of influencers to put out a lot of content and kind of see what sticks.
Because it changes the dynamics in the way your business works, in the fact that paying those affiliates is marketing, it's an additional cost, and how are you going to manage that with your margins? But I guess their processing fees might be different to Amazon.
So that's actually not an avenue I would go down myself with my business model. Cause like you said, our margins just are not big enough to benefit from running some sort of TikTok shop affiliate campaign. However, we do still get some of the benefit of those campaigns going well for the brands that we sell. And I'll give a good example of that. There's one brand of power tools that we sell that we've been selling for a number of years, where one day out of the blue, we sold 35 units of a product that we usually sell 2 of per day. And I'm like, that's weird. What's going on? Next day, we sold 60, right? And in 4 days, we sold through 60 days worth of stock. So I'm on the phone with the brands, guys, what's going on, right? Is something crazy going on that I don't know about? And they're like, some influencer posted some video on TikTok and it's going viral. And now the listing sold out. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get back in stock in time to capitalize on the rest of that. But that goes to show how even the folks in our position who aren't necessarily putting any ad dollars in, or in some cases, I hate to say it, but not benefiting the brands, we're just a reseller in the cases of these large brands, but that's how we can benefit from some of these social dynamics.
Yeah, but the other thing is that they're de-risking by selling to yourselves, just getting rid of the stock, so they benefit one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at the end of the day, the brands are they're making the money, right? The product had to come from somewhere, and it came from them.
Exactly. Okay, let's speak about Amazon. You don't really advertise on Amazon, as you said, but you do have a really strong tip for listeners on how you run advertising with ridiculous ROAS. So let's hear that.
Yeah. So guys, if you take nothing else away from this interview, nothing else away from this conversation, remember what I'm about to say right now. This is my number one tip by far. I've got a YouTube video that explains like screen share, step-by-step setup in 3 minutes or less. Feel free to plug that if you want.
I will link to it.
But it's called the Catch All Auto PPC campaign. And it's particularly effective for people like myself people who are resellers who are selling a lot of brand name products. So you set up an automatic PPC campaign. You add every single product in your inventory to that campaign. You set a fixed bid at 5 cents, and you do it's fixed bid. So you don't, that's what you do for the bid placement there. And then you simply turn it on, right? And every single week, if you add new products to your inventory, you just one click, add those products into the ad campaign. So it's about a 3-minute setup. It's about a 10-second per week maintenance just to add your new products. And from September of 2020 to today, December of 2024, that campaign has generated, when I checked this morning, $802,000 in additional sales for a total ad spend of just over 18 grand. So the ROAS, if you do the math, is something like 44 to 1. And this is the highest leverage thing you can do as an Amazon seller. So pause this and do it now. And what I found consistently, it adds about 10% to my monthly sales. So this one campaign accounts for about 10% of my revenue each month. It's that significant.
Yeah, and then Amazon drives the traffic directly to your listing, to your price, to your listing, right? Not necessarily to the general listing where you need to fight for the buy box.
Yeah, exactly. So that is generally how Amazon PPC works. So Amazon will not serve your ad unless you're in the buy box. So it's
Okay.
basically impossible for you to spend ad dollars for someone else to get the sale, more or less.
Makes sense. And I know we touched on this earlier. What is the outlook? What's the outlook for Amazon in 2025?
So Amazon is increasingly catering to professional sellers and to brands themselves. So the writing's been on the wall for a number of years now, but we've seen it with a lot of the recent changes that Amazon has made to the platform. Unless you are buying directly from the brand or buying directly from a large authorized distributor of the brand, you're putting yourself in hot water because of Amazon's new requirements around supply chain authenticity and all this stuff. So that leaves, again, wholesale sellers like myself and like the folks inside my community very well positioned to dominate in 2025 because so many people are quitting over this when it's not really a big deal, in my opinion.
So what are the measures they're putting in place to ensure that they know they're dealing with professional sellers like yourself?
One of the main things I just mentioned is the supply chain basically the tightened security Amazon has around supply chains. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you could buy any old Crest toothpaste product from some guy off the street and you could sell it on Amazon and make your money and nobody cares, right? Amazon didn't really do a good job of verifying supply chain. But now, with a lot of the counterfeiting going on the platform, a
Mm,
lot of the knockoffs getting sold, the FTC, and not to mention these massive brands themselves are breathing down Amazon's neck, saying, hey, you better clean up the platform. You better make sure our brand image isn't getting tarnished when somebody buys a pair of Nike socks and what shows up is a pair of Nike socks from Alibaba, right? So because of that, Amazon has gotten a lot stricter on verifying your supply chain. I've already had 2 times this year where I get an email from Amazon saying, hey, we think this product that you're selling might be fake. We need to
mm.
jump on a video call with you and you need to prove to us that it's not. And what we had to do is we had to put together, I'm not exaggerating, it was a 27-page PDF of screenshots verifying every single facet of the supply chain for this product. Everything from here is my passport, my license, all the way to here is my email correspondence with the supplier, all the way to here is the invoice, here's the bank statement, here's the credit card statement. So Amazon is making you jump through all these hoops to prove your products are legit. And
Yeah.
we pass with flying colors because our stuff is legit. So again, for big professional legitimate sellers, this is a good thing because this is filtering out so many people who are not sophisticated.
Yeah, they've got to do it. They've got to do it for the safety of their community, of their platform, marketplace security and
Right.
safety. Yeah. Okay. Is there any other thing you think the audience should know about wholesaling? I would take that question back and actually ask you this, which is a good number of listeners of this podcast already doing like good volume selling direct to consumer. How can they build out a very strong wholesale business? Because you speak sometimes directly to manufacturers who are these D2C e-commerce businesses and distributors. So some of these e-commerce businesses do not have a distributor network. How do they navigate so they have a very strong wholesale sort of arm of the business to solidify their reach in the market?
That's a great question. And so my answer is two-pronged, right? So part one is brands that are going to build out a really robust wholesale program. They don't just sell to anybody who wants to buy in bulk. In fact, that's the biggest mistake that a brand can make, is not being choosy with their distribution partners. Because I see it all the time. Brands on Amazon where early on in the brand's existence, they sold to anyone and their mother, and then 3, 6, 12 months down the line on Amazon, they've got 30 different people selling their product, and it's like herding cats trying to get that back under control. So I think successful brands don't just sell to anyone. And then the second part of that answer is they have a tightly controlled supply chain. So like I said, they're very choosy with who they choose to represent their product. And when they choose somebody, they make sure that somebody also is tightly controlling distribution, right? Not just getting their product in the hands of anybody, but the right people to represent their brand.
So that distributor piece is very important.
It's
Okay.
critical.
Yeah, it's critical. Okay. And I guess you'd probably want to, yeah, it's that distributor. So how would they select this distributor? Are they like category specific distributors? So let's say we sell apparel, just as an example. Would we be looking for distributors with an interest in apparel and track record?
So I would recommend yes. If anything, you want your distributor to specialize in whatever niche it is that you're in. Now,
Mhm.
there's something to be said for the really large distributors who just have connections or capabilities that maybe some of the more niche distributors don't have.
Mhm.
But in general, you've also got to think about what your needs are. Do you really need to get into a specific region? Because if so, there might be a distributor who's already very well entrenched in that region, and you might go with them just for that ability, right? So a
Mhm.
lot of it is needs dependent as well.
And then they do the legwork locally to get your product through.
So that's the traditional value that a distributor is going to add. That'd be their pitch to the brand as well. Hey, we're going to get you, depending on what markets they serve, we're going to get you on shelves in these areas, or we're going to get you in the catalogs and maybe some of these smaller wholesalers in this area as well. It really, again, it's very dependent on the distributor and what value it is that they specifically add.
Amazing. Corey, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. You do have a course, which is the Wholesale Crash course. It's a start, scale, and outsource a widely profitable Amazon wholesale business. It's a 5-day email course, which breaks down everything you need to know about setting up your wholesale business to scaling it up to 7 figures. It's available on freewholesaleguide.com. I will link to it in the show notes. Are there any other resources you want listeners to learn about?
The main other one I would recommend is actually my podcast, right? It's called the Amazon Wholesale Podcast. And so every single week I sit down and interview other people in this business. And so I think if the audience has any interest in this business model at all, I think they would gain a lot from tuning in there. Specifically, I'd say episode 65, where I sat down with 2 other guys. They're actually both members of the mastermind community as well. And we just talk about what does success with wholesale look like in 2024 and 2025 and beyond. So I'd say that's a good episode to start, is episode 65.
I will definitely link to the Wholesale podcast, Amazon Wholesale podcast, that is. Corey, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you for coming on the 2X e-commerce podcast.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Amazing. Wow. What an episode. If you're like me, you're fired up right now thinking about the potential of Amazon wholesale. Corey didn't just break down the business, he gave you the blueprint. So here's a question. What's stopping you? If you ever thought about wholesale, about getting bigger, moving smarter, and turning Amazon into a serious profit machine, this is your sign to take action. And if you love this episode, don't just stop here. Subscribe, follow, share it with one person who needs to hear this. The bigger our community, the better insights you can bring to help you win. I'll see you on the next one. Let's keep building.